Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, which is all about the state of search and social and how it's changed, particularly over this last 6 to 12 months and what we're expecting it to do in the future. My name is Dante. I'll be taking you through today, and we'll also be providing a recording of this at the Business Station YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube, type in Business Station. You'll be able to see the channel there to see this and a whole selection of other really great webinars from a variety of presenters. Myself, I've got about 30 of them in there, and there's others who've got theirs in there as well. There's always something to learn in there, so please just keep checking back on that station, on that channel, to be able to see what's going on. We'll get underway now with this webinar, which is going to be a bit of fun and a little bit of futurism, I guess, too, where we're going to look into the future of what's possible, what's going on, what we can expect, and a little bit more about the reasons behind why some of these things have changed a little. Just going to do a quick look on my stuff here. Let's see if that's going to be a bit clearer. That's a little bit better. All right, let's get underway. So starting off, I've got a little quote here from Rick Levine, who's a very famous TV commercial director, particularly in America, not so much in Australia, of course, but he's known for a lot of those different Super Bowl kind of ads. And he said, authenticity, honesty, personal voice, they all underlie much of what works online. That and cats, of course. What he's saying there is basically that authentic voice, that personal voice that comes across is definitely that's underpinning a lot of what we're doing with any sort of content online. And that's reflected in the search results, which are going to get quite a few bits of information out of Google and Facebook here, and some of the other platforms where we find some of those analytics are telling us that there's definitely been a change afoot in this past year. So what we're going to look at is search in 2020 and how it changed, social in 2020 and how it changed, and then finally what we can expect from 2021 and what kind of content is going to be really effective, and how you can sort of tie in what you're doing with search and social together to have a really cohesive plan moving forward. I'm Dante St James. If you haven't met me before, I have a lot of individual certifications from Facebook Australia and New Zealand, as well as being a certified practicing marketer for the Australian Marketing Institute. I work with Lean Startup Labs out of America and the Google Digital Springboard Program for digital literacy in Australia and in Indonesia as well. And currently working with Treaty Business Consulting a couple of days a week, consulting for them as a digital trainer and a digital advisor as well. And my background of education's down the bottom. I've done a few things in a few places. I don't kind of get too carried away with that, because let's face it, all the best learning happens when you're online and doing it for yourself, doesn't it? So search in 2020 has, well, we can say it's really sort of narrowed its focus down away from a lot of the very tricky kind of search things that we're looking at, perhaps in the last 10 years, to things that aren't so tricky, things that are a little bit more reliable and based upon the changing tastes of consumers and that, big C word that came up this year as well. What we have seen, though, is that use of Google has increased in this past 6 months. In February, 91% of the world was using Google properties to search with. And by Google properties, I mean Google itself and YouTube, which is the second biggest search engine by a long shot. Bing is barely even rating in there. What we're finding now is that 94% of all searches are going through Google properties. Bing has lost market share. DuckDuckGo and all those independent, non-tracking ones are just not trusted so much. And that's a theme that's going to come up a lot with what's happened in 2020, is that there's been an erosion of trust in very new concepts, and there's been a lot of trust being given back to what's comfortable, what's familiar, and what seems to have authority along that way. Just as we get underway too, I forgot to mention the chat window is open as well. If you've got some questions to ask along the way, please do, or use the Q&A. You can do that as well. Just look at the bottom of the Zoom screen and you'll be able to see where those buttons are to get you started. In February, when we're looking for search, the trends were very much leading towards the ideas of convenience. So we're seeing, the rise and rise and rise of the Uberification of things, whether it's, the new DoorDash service, which is doing meal deliveries on top of Uber Eats, Deliveroo, Menulog, all those kind of places right around the country. Doesn't matter where you are, you seem to have an ability to be able to do these things. It's, I call it also the Airbnb-ification, I guess, of, opening up the idea that people can sell for themselves and be very quick and responsive to it, whereas traditional hotels, traditional restaurant businesses, traditional taxi services haven't been quite as responsive, and they haven't really kept up. We're looking for a lot of personal reassurance. We want to know that, am I a good person? Am I a valuable person? Am I someone who's worth knowing? We're looking for a lot of inspiration. In fact, we wanted to be inspired to act on things rather than being told what to do. We're still looking for better value though. Like, we're looking for deals. No, make no mistake, everyone was still trying to get the best deal possible they could get on everything they possibly could. And we don't think that's going to change in much of a hurry either. And we were looking to find our tribe. There was a great big call for us to find people just like us. There was a lot of conversations going on in the lead up to this year being an election year in the US, that the tribalization of the internet was kind of driving people apart, driving big wedges between people, as we found more of an echo chamber of going into forums and groups and all that, full of people who say all the same things that we do and are the same things that we are, and are familiar and comfortable. But at the same time, we were looking for tribes that were perhaps a little bit more edgy. These are all coming from Google search trends back in February 2020, with a little bit of help from, it was, was it Coopers and Lybrand? I keep forgetting the full name of them. I'll get it. They are people who work and do big studies. That's it. In September, though, that all changed. We're looking more for trustworthy information. We're looking for very clear directions. Rather than being inspired on what to do, we wanted to be told what to do. We want to be instructed in the best place to go. Naturally, a big global pandemic happened, so we wanted the latest trustworthy information. We wanted the government to tell us what to do. We were going to trustworthy news sources. We were veering away from things like Sky News, which has got incredibly more sensationalistic, and veering back to the ABC. In fact, the ABC listening online app and the news website has just skyrocketed up. It's by far and above the most trusted news source, well above the Sydney Morning Herald or the West Australian. The one that kind of keeps pace with them is news.com.au, naturally, which is a little bit less controversial than its sister publication, skynews.com.au. We wanted to know what's okay with our friends and family. We're looking at ways to connect with them, because we couldn't be with them, particularly if we live in the state. I live 3,500 kilometers from my parents, and I'd certainly feel that distance when there's a global pandemic or some sort of disaster brewing away. And we wanted to know if we're going to be okay. We want to know if this thing's going to kill us. We want to know if there was information we could get that clarified whether we're doing the right thing. Do I wear a mask? Don't I wear a mask? Can I go to Brisbane? Is there any problem with me going to Melbourne? Can I actually get into Melbourne? Can I leave the country because I need to see my folks overseas? That's all the stuff we were asking about, rather than, am I okay as a person? I wanted to know, am I okay in terms of my health? Am I going to survive this thing? Including, am I still going to have a job at the end of this? We've noticed too that search has, even though it's increased and it's certainly gone very hard into the Google world, we found that search on tablets has crashed to the lowest level since 2014. There's a couple of really good reasons for this. One of the major ones is that sales of tablets have also crashed. Even though there's new iPads coming out all the time, there's better and better Android tablets coming out all the time. We've got tablets that actually come apart from computer bases. So there's plenty of devices out there, but the sales of them seem to have crashed. And a lot of that's to do with the fact that the iPad is a very durable piece of hardware. iPads are lasting a lot longer in people's possession than what we ever thought they would. We thought an iPad was something you buy once, and a couple of years later you replace it. Some 5 years later, people are still using second and third generation iPads, even if they don't update anymore. It just goes to show that a really good piece of quality hardware is certainly carried along. But we've also found that the tablet usage has all been around entertainment. It's not around information. It's not around education. It's not around workflow. Now, you're going to have outliers. You're going to have the occasional person that does it. But by and large, we're just not using tablets as our daily driver of work being done or study being done. We're using, increasingly in universities and schools, Chromebooks or lower end PCs, but we're not using tablets to that level. And there's this thought, I guess, that tablets never really had the power to do it, and you couldn't install all your normal stuff on a tablet like you could on a PC or maybe on a Mac. So that's changing a lot now, where what's powering the biggest iPads right now is now powering the next generation of Macintosh laptops. So there's a very big change in the winds, just to show that things are definitely moving. Will that increase search on tablets? It doesn't really matter because these guys have certainly made up for it. I'm talking about mobile phones. Searching on phones is now at 56% of all searches that actually happen. And 20% of those searches are done using voice. Now that gets even bigger when we're talking about younger people. People under 25 primarily now use voice to search on their phones. They talk to Siri, they talk to Google, they ask, hey G, hey S, and to get answers for them. And those answers could be where the local pizza place is, what time does Kmart close, to ask calculation questions, to ask facts and figures questions, converting of temperatures, converting of measures and weights and volumes is done by just simply asking your phone to answer that for you. And it's been a really different way they've been using it. And as they're coming up through the age groups and becoming, into that where the millennials are, which are the primary consumers across all markets, now we're starting to see that there's a big change in the way that you have to act on Google to be able to leverage this change and to get in more of those searches. Because as you know, those kind of searches are only answering one answer. They might bring up a list of things on the screen, but the one voice answer you're getting is usually the top answer and you're not getting anything else. So where does this all lead us? Well, it leads us to the biggest search this year, unsurprisingly being coronavirus. I don't think anything was even coming close to that. COVID-19 as a word, so anything to do with the virus has certainly dominated everything right up until September this year. Now it's starting to move a little bit and we're starting to see a lot more search traffic coming through for other things. What we did find though is that branded search was up significantly. Now what I call branded search is, let's think about cheese slices. Now, if we're looking for cheese slices, it's a difference between looking for individually wrapped cheese slices and craft singles or bigger singles, if they're called that now. The difference is you looking for something, a brand that you know and trust, as opposed to a category of purchase. Trust has become everything. If there's a brand that's trusted, if there's a name that's trusted, we're now going directly for that. We're not going for, in our suburb, hey G, what time does the supermarket in my suburb close? We're going, hey G, what time does Woolworths close? What time does Coles close? What time does Kmart close? We're actually asking for specific brands. And that comes right down to products and it comes down to services as well. So we're not asking necessarily, can you please find me a psychotherapist? We're saying, can you please find me Claire, the psychotherapist in Wynnum? And that's the way that we're now searching. We're searching much more precisely for the name of the business we're dealing with or the name of the person who's running that business, which means that branding is also now everything because that trust goes with a brand. So if you're not doing much in the way of branding or much in the way of becoming more recognizable in your market for what you do, then you're probably missing some of the boat on where this is going. The broad searches for categories such as physiotherapists in Glebe, or you're looking for mobile phone repairs in Palmerston, those searches have dipped a good 20 to 25% in the last 6 months. Now that will it'll even out a bit more now as we start to move into more of a trusting time, but we expect that's going to hold on for a while. And that branding element is going to become even more important. So if you've done no work on branding at all, about getting people used to who you are and what you're doing, that 2020 to 2021 changeover, it's probably a great idea for you to do a little bit of work in that over the break. It's the ideal time to do it because if your business slows down over the Christmas New Year period, that's a great time to be spending a bit of time on figuring out who you are as a brand. Moving on. So if obviously search has changed, so has search engine optimization. The ability for you to rank better on search engines like Google. That's shifted as well. Gone are now those whole thing of putting keywords in domains. So that an example of that would be joondulutplumbers.com.au. When it's called JG Willis Plumbers and you've just gone joondulutplumber.com.au, you've just decided that you're going to try and get all those searches for Joondalup Plumbers. Well, then that's not having anywhere near the same effect that it used to. Now, the person who got in there 10 years ago and got a whole lot of search results as a result of that are not going to be punished so much. They're just not going to get further increases. They're going to have to do something else to get those searches up. So if you think you're going to skip to the top of the queue by having the name of your town and then plumber, or the name of your town and then coach or counselor in there, that's not going to get you there. The keyword in the domain name is no longer a very highly ranked search term. It's more about the content now. Getting random backlinks from Hot Frog and all those sort of dodgy domains that don't really exist, or overseas, link farms and all that. Now, this stopped being a search factor probably about 3 to 5 years ago. It's not been a really big idea, and those link farms have been really downgraded and downsampled when it comes to everywhere on the internet, not just on Google. But backlinks are still great. Getting backlinks from authoritative places that are relevant to you, that makes a lot of sense. But random backlinks from things that have no link to your industry, no link to your business, are not going to help you get across the line even more. Despite what SEMrush or Ahrefs or SpyFu or any of those tools are trying to tell you, having 2,000 links back from the links at the bottom of people's websites that has no contextual link to what you do is not going to help you anymore. Linking of unrelated words is another thing that's going away. So the idea would be, if I'm linking the word unrelated through to my website that's selling scented candles, it's not going to have any sort of value to you. That link, even though again, it'll come up in backlink checkers like SEMrush and all those guys, it's not going to help you out though when it comes to the actual ranking factors in Google. That's all being taken away. Now, branded linking is going to be even more important, and I'll handle that in the next screen. Looking at duplicated local listings. Now, this has been a little trick that a lot of people in local areas have been trying to do with Google My Business, which is taking your one address on Google My Business and going, well, I know somebody who lives in a street over in that suburb. So if I show up in the 3-pack of results that are coming up for that particular type of business in their suburb too, that can only be really helpful for me. So I'll just get them to verify at their home address that I also operate there, and they'll get me into their area as well. So that's, while it still kind of is working, it's going to work a lot less by middle of next year. Google are going through and systematically removing a lot of these duplicated local listings. I've got an example of a local web developer in Darwin who's a competitor of mine. And even though his work is pretty ordinary, he's been able to keep his business going simply because he's been able to duplicate those local listings and come up very high in the search results in that 3-pack under the maps. I call it 3-pack because it's usually 3 businesses that are linked underneath the map in the Google results. That he's been coming up as one of those, and he comes up almost everywhere, no matter where you go in Darwin. It doesn't come up anywhere else. I think the Sunshine Coast is the one other place that he randomly comes up in, because he's got friends who live there that he was able to get them to verify the address down there as well. Now that will start to be effective. In fact, I've seen 5 of his links already removed. If you report these kind of links, they're going to be removed pretty quickly, because that person cannot easily re-verify that address when they're prompted to. And if they can't re-verify it within a certain period of time, that link is actually taken off them. So if that's been part of your SEO strategy, I'd probably start moving on to something else. Guest posting has been one of those mainstays of SEO for, it must be about 15 years now. The idea where you go and write a blog entry as a guest at someone else's website, and you leave a link in your blog that you've written for them to your blog on your website. Now that kind of thing is starting to be seen through as utterly irrelevant, because they're not really, unless there's some kind of really solid link between what you do and what the other person does. If they're just selling space on a blog that to any old person, that link is now going to be disregarded as a factor in the search by Google. And they've very much confirmed this. This is not a secret anymore. This is something that's just gone, it's just utterly irrelevant. Unless, say, for instance, you're a small business and you're part of a small business network and you've written a guest blog post on there, there is a defined link between you and that business, in that you are listed on there as one of their existing clients or members. So there is a link there. There's a relevance there. If there's no relevance, right, for instance, you're going to very random local directories that have kind of been built by a local person, and they're not great. They're kind of messy. They're a lot of out of date, and they're writing articles that link through to you and charging you for that service. That sort of stuff will be seen as quite irrelevant to you, because it's not actually adding any value to searches, because nobody is using that particular local directory. So that's sadly a fact that's going to go away, because I actually quite enjoyed doing guest posting and having people guest post for me as well. But that's okay. We've got plenty of other tricks in our SEO pack, such as making sure that your site is super fast loading. This is the stuff that attention's now switching over to. You want to make sure your site loads in under 3 seconds. 5 seconds just doesn't cut it anymore. Who sits there and waits 5 seconds for anything to load before they can read it? 3 seconds is becoming pretty much the standard. I'm now working on many of my sites that I work with to get it to under 1 second, which is very, very difficult. Getting it under 2 is possible. So again, I've got quite a lot of them to 1.5 seconds now. But if your site is taking longer than 5 seconds to load, you are being punished on Google. If it takes more than 3 seconds to load, you're not so much being punished, but bear in mind that all your competitors are probably working really hard on getting their sites to load a whole lot faster. Having consistent information about your business across multiple platforms is becoming very important too. That's because Google likes to be the central point of data for everybody. So if the Google My Business result that you've got in there, that profile, it's all yours on Google, has your phone number in a certain format, say as in, 0412 gap 123 gap 123, that's the same format you have to write it in almost everywhere you have on the internet. Now, if you've done a +61 version of your phone number, then that's the one that really needs to appear everywhere. Now, for people who are carrying on about, I have to have the +61 because of all those international people, it's only really important to you if you really do have a lot of international people calling you. And even if you did, they will find your number somewhere in that 61 thing. If it's clear that you're in a particular country, they can work it out for themselves where they've got to call you. Everybody within Australia does not need a +61 in front of your 0423 number. Just put down your plain number. Unless your majority of your customers are overseas, it looks pretentious. For older people, it makes it harder for them to understand what they're supposed to be calling. Get rid of the +61. You do not need it. And then make sure that format lives across all the places where you are. Every directory, yellow pages, local search, in the Google My Business, Bing Places, Apple Maps, all those places that you would have your phone number listed, even on your own website and other people's, make sure it's listed the exactly same way, exactly the same format, so you get the maximum impact of the advantages of having that consistent info, which means that Google trusts you more. And if Google trusts you more, then more people are going to see you and having that information correct. And I would say even things like your opening hours, making sure that you upload holiday opening hours in one place, update it everywhere. Yes, it's annoying. It really is. But trust me, it makes a massive difference to your searchability when someone's looking for what you do, not for your brand, but for what you do, and they're up against 5 different search results. If you have this one thing right, this consistency right, it will jettison you right up the list compared to your competitors who haven't bothered to do it. Having a logical site structure. Now, this one might seem like it's a little bit of a scary one, because how do I do that? It's very much about having, if you think about the address of all the pages on your site. So you're going to have your domain. So let's just say the domain.com /, and then there's a category usually, and then /, and then sort of a truncated version of the title of that page. Let's just say it is 10 things I love about you. So it'd be 10-things-I-love-about-you. The structure of that page will then go, okay, so is that 10 things I love about you, is that a product? Then it should be /product /10 things I love about you. Or is it a service? It'd be services/product. Or it can be blog or articles, just to make sure that there is some consistent structure across your site with how things are presented in those addresses. That allows Google to make different things that are related to each other even more tightly related in their index. So for instance, it knows, okay, everything with blog before it and then an address will tell you that they're all kind of related as random articles that are written about a particular topic or not. And then it knows how to index those together and link them together. And then when it comes to things like your products, it goes, well, I can easily index, I know, because everything that has products and then / and then an address to it, we know that they're all products that are for sale. So we know how to index those when people are looking for that and giving them suggestions for other pages that may be helpful for them. So that structure is probably more about how you name your menus and how you name your categories. If you've got category names that kind of make no sense, or they've got numbers in them when they shouldn't have numbers, or they've got like code in them that shouldn't have, just get it really tight down to having readable words by humans and by Google as well. Structured data I'm going to have a look at very shortly, because that's a little bit of a funny one. And it's also featured snippets are also a bit of a funny one, because they're hard to explain unless you see them. Once you see them on the screen, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to them. And there is a specific way you go about being better able to get those in Google too. Because let's face it, you know, over 50% of searches these days on Google's don't lead to a click through to your website. That's shocking, because Google's now showing that information within itself. If there's an answer that comes from your website to a specific question that someone's looking for, it makes sense to give people the best possible experience for getting that answer, which is not sending them off to a slow loading website. It's about getting that answer, displaying it straight on screen with an option to go off to the website to get more information about that thing. So what do I mean when I'm talking about this? I'm talking about these things. These are called featured snippets. And in this one about how to start a business in Australia that I got a response to, it's not even an Australian business or an Australian registration or even an Australian website that got the #1 result in this structured data for how to start a business in Australia. It's HubSpot, which is a customer relationship management system out of the United States. It's not even a .com.au, it's a .com. It's because they have created the best and most authoritative list of data in a logical format for how to create a business in Australia. It was brilliant by them, because how many people will be searching for something like, how do I start a business? How do I start a business in Australia? And they're getting this response. It's attractive to someone to get that, because they're getting those top 7 things. They go, well, that's what I've got to do. So I'll just take a little screenshot of that, or I'll go off to that link and I'll find out more about it. Now, there's initial data is indicating that these kind of pieces of information, whilst they're not increasing clicks through to a website, they are increasing the brand recognition of where that information is coming from. So if it's coming from HubSpot and you see enough answers coming out from HubSpot, you're going to trust what HubSpot has to say, because they seem to come up in a lot of these searches for things like this. On the right, you've got the one where I asked the question, how do you do structured data? And it immediately comes up with neilpatel.com. Now, I'm in Australia. I'm nowhere near where Neil Patel is, who I think is in Los Angeles. He is just optimized for this answer so very well. In fact, his answer for how to do structured data has come up before Google's own answer, because he's got such good authority in this space. He's such an SEO expert, and he's got so much stuff going through to his website all the time that when he can answer a question like this in the right structured data structure, it then comes through as this featured snippet. And then it's also provided a whole lot of answers down underneath in these here from his website and others as well. So that's a really good way of getting extra traffic and becoming the expert in your space, that if someone's asking for you, how do I advertise in, let's pick a town anytime, Geraldton in WA. How do I advertise in Geraldton? If you want to you want to make sure that you as an agency come up as the first answer for that. And this is how you do it, through this structured data. What you're starting to notice too is there's a lot in common here. It's usually a heading that matches what you're looking for, and dot points or numbered bullet points. That seems to be what the structure is that Google's looking for when it comes to those kind of answers coming up first in Google. And then there's also those informational ones. So there's calculations, stuff like, what's the weather in Nhulunbuy right now? It's 31 degrees Celsius and slightly overcast with a humidity of 59%. Well, that's great. It no longer needs to go to weather.com to get that information, or the BOM or the Bureau of Meteorology or any of those weather sites. It just brings that information straight on through. Other calculations, such as how do you calculate GST, came up with calculatersaustralia.com.au saying, well, when adding 10% to the price, it brings up the formula within the answers there. I don't know if that's going to help out that particular website that much, but if you were looking for other calculators, that might be something you'd click on to go and find out more information how you would do that. And then that one where you're asking how to make sauerkraut from scratch, which was a real search that I was looking for because I spend way too much on sauerkraut, so I really like it. And I wanted to make it from scratch myself. So I was like, well, how hard is it? I'm not looking for a recipe right now. I just want to see how hard it is. And I looked at it and went, oh, that's nothing. That's like pretty easy, actually. Just packing cabbage into a jar, weighing it down, adding liquid if you need to. That's pretty simple to do. So I worked out very quickly that when I went to thekitchen.com, that's when I could look at more of those details. So this kind of bullet pointed information is vitally important for you to start showing up a lot higher in the search results. But then again, remember, it's asking specific questions. A lot of these things are about asking a question or asking for a formula or asking for an authoritative answer to something. Asking things like, where is the best coffee in cans? Then you've got a chance to come up as the result for that if you do things in the right structure, which is a very quick answer in the beginning. So you look at the calculate GST one, it answers the question very, very quickly in one sentence, and then it shows out the work in points. So it goes point one, it's this, point two, it's this. It makes it very, very simple for you to be able to consume that information, and it makes it very easy for Google to display it because it's done very briefly. It's just brief little bites of information served to you. This also moves across to how you write your blogs and how you write your page content in your website. And a lot of that's going to be now what we're seeing is the great trend forward is in your title, you ask a question. In the first sentence, you answer that question as quickly and as concisely as you possibly can. And then you show the steps that back up your answer. So the question could be, what is the least toxic form of candles, of scented candles? And the answer would be, well, the least toxic, and this, I don't know this for sure, this is just, something I'm throwing out there. The least toxic form of scented candles are made with soy wax, which has a low smoke point, a high smoke point, doesn't produce too many fumes, and tends to have less allergens per micrometer than any other kind of wax. And then I show that out in steps, and I go, soy wax has been shown to have less allergens according to this study by the blah, 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 blah. This means that less people are going to have problems with it, with itchy eyes and runny noses and any sort of highly allergic reactions. Number two, the best kind of non-toxic, scented candles to use is ones that don't feature artificial fragrances, but use natural fragrances. This is because they don't contain additional chemicals, which are further polluting the home. And if you go in those steps like that, you've got to back up your answers as quickly as you possibly can. Now, you can write a lot more further down as a blog entry, as long as you have a summary at the top that asks the question, answers the question, gives at least 3 points that back up your answer to that question. And then you can read more down in your blog or in your article that explains more about what it is you do. So whether you're a music teacher and you want to do something like, say, for instance, what's the best way to learn how to play piano? Well, the best way to learn about piano is the XXXX method that came out of Tokyo University in 1959. And then you show the steps out. It's shown to be the most effective because it allows kids to learn by blah, 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 blah. It also shown to be effective for adult learners because blah, 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 blah. And we've also found that people are learning these things a lot more quickly because it's a more fun way of doing it that makes it more interactive with less theory. And then you can go, if you want to know more about it, read on. And they can read on a lot more about that particular topic if they wish to. In fact, if you want website content, I would go so far as to say, yes, you want to answer questions, but specifically you want to answer the top 10 things that people ask about your products and your services and turn those into either blog posts or actual pages. I'm less of a fan of blogs these days and more of a fan of what I call shadow pages. They're not linked as a page that you can go looking for on your website, but Google can see them. So they're not linked through your menu. They're not part of a blog. You can't go to a category and see them all. What they do is they get the attention of Google. They're linked to the rest of your site, but your rest of your site isn't linked to them necessarily, except for maybe other related articles in your site that may be able to sort of cross-refer to them. This is because these are the top 10 things people are asking you. They're likely to be the top 10 things that people are also asking Google about your products and services. That's 10 pieces of content for your website. Boom, just like that. How about another 10? Well, you ask the top 10 things that we wish people would ask about your products and services. So what are they? The top 10 that they do ask, and the top 10 that you wish that they would ask. That way, you're getting 20 pieces of content straight off the bat, filling up your website with lots of stuff. And those questions are going to change over time. Now, if you create these as blog entries, they'd be kind of effective. But if you created these as what I call landing pages, so if you're in WordPress, you just create a brand new page, doesn't have to be on your menu, just a brand new page that it just has that title, has that process we went through of answering the question, backing it up with at least 3 little points, and then going into a bit more detail further down if you wish. That will be what helps to lift you up those search rankings, because you're answering the questions that people are asking, but you're also giving an opportunity for those few people who do have some insight in your products and services by answering the questions that you wish people would ask, because someone out there is going to have that question. It's the difference between, what colors are these, the Whitehall Lounge available in, and the more deep questions is the Whitehall Lounge still available in burgundy maroon? So it's just answering what we call the obvious questions and what we call the long tail questions. Those questions that don't get asked very often, but when they come up, you want to make sure that you're the one who's answering them. 10 things that people ask already about your services and products, and 10 things that you wish people would ask. That right there is probably enough content to go for your whole next year when it comes to what you want to do to update your website. If you're using Wix, the same thing, just create a new page. You can nest it on as a menu item under an existing menu item, but I wouldn't even do that. I just have it as a standalone page, which just has the same, headings and header and footer that the rest of the website's got, but the actual header and footer doesn't have to link through to the content on this page at any point. Google's going to find it. Search engines are going to find it. Yes. You don't need people to just sort of randomly come across it as they're going through the pages in your website, because we don't really need people to be on our websites for long. We just need them to get the right information thereafter when they are on our websites. So they're far more likely to progress down your sales funnel and come back to you a little later on to make that order or make that purchase or click that button to call you to ask how they can get your services. When it looks to getting the answers on things like mobile phones, as simple as you can make it is the better, because simple searches are done with simple answers. So it's things such as, hey G, I'll even ask it right now, and I'll hopefully turn it up so you can actually hear it. Hey Google, where's the closest Italian restaurant to where I am now?
I found a few Italian restaurants near you.
So it couldn't find one that's actually anywhere near me. They're quite a long way away. But if I go, hey Google, what time does Kmart at Casuarina close tonight?
Kmart Darwin at 247 Trower Road closes at midnight.
There you go. So you're getting very, very small, quick, short, sharp answers. And that's what voice search is really all about. It's about getting that kind of thing. And it's getting very good at understanding our slurry words, our drunk words and all. It's getting very, very good at recognizing what we're saying. I think if you remember Siri from many years ago, it was pretty darn bad there for a while. So that's search and that's SEO. What about social media? It too has changed dramatically over this past year. And anyone who's had an ad account that's been banned in the last 6 months will know exactly what we're talking about. Social has gone beyond being a part of our lives to being the center of a lot of our lives. For good or for bad, it has shifted into a big way into our lives. Now, I've got some figures here that were specifically made for a presentation in the Northern Territory. So we ignore the little Northern Territory flag there and understand that in Australia, it's between 16 and 18 million people were present on Facebook at the beginning of the year. So in February 2020, that went up by 19 to 21 million. Why does it go up and down? Well, people's behavior goes up and down. One day it could be 19 million. On Wednesday, it could be 21 million. Depending on what's happening in the world. If there's things going on that get people talking again, then people come back on in mass to those platforms. We're not all as present all day as others. Some people are just in there when something happens and they want to find information. It's by far the biggest of all the platforms on the planet. It is now at about, since I wrote this, 2.8 million. It's actually just about to crack the 3 billion across the planet. And we're looking at cracking that 21 million, going to 21.5 million in Australia. So Facebook had a bit of artificial growth this year simply because there was a big crisis, and that tended to draw people back into social networks because that's where they connect with people that they know and love. In Facebook, it tends to be, and also randoms. We know we've all got a few randoms in there as well. Instagram had some growth this year too, starting off with 9.4 million people at the beginning of the year, up to 11 million. That's around about 11,250,000 at the moment. So it's gone up even since this happened in October. One of the reasons for that is that Reels are starting to work. People are starting to notice them, and it's not impacting TikTok in any way, but it is getting more people playing on the platform and having a bit more fun with it. Moving along the different social medias, Snapchat is running at about 6.7 million. Didn't have a huge year, but still had a rise. That's mainly because, I guess, the need for young people and everyone really to have a bit of escapism when it comes to what they want to experience. We can't just be watching Sky News and looking at the NT News and the West Australian and the Courier Mail every single day of the week and consuming no other things. We actually want to be entertained. We want some freedom of thought. We want a bit of a break from all the doom and gloom as well. LinkedIn has had a bit of a remarkable change this year. About another 500,000 people hopped on the platform in Australia. Worldwide, we also had a lot of people hop on it too, up from 330 million people worldwide to 338 million. Now, you might be seeing some of these figures are saying, talking like 600 million people. It's not that many who are actually active on it every single week. That's more so there's a lot of people who had accounts created for them back in 2008, and they didn't know what they were creating, and it became an online resume of sorts. The active users on there are between that 330 and 338 million. We're expecting that to crack the 450 million by around the middle of next year, though, because it's becoming increasingly big and increasingly busy and increasingly influential when it comes to careers, study, knowledge, and business networking as well. TikTok has been the big winner, particularly in the developed world in the last year. It's gone up from basically being unknown to having 1.6 million users in Australia. It's about steady at that. It's not really gaining any more. In fact, it's kind of losing a few people. A lot of people installed it, had to play with it for a week and got rid of it. Younger people are consuming it on mass. If you're under 25, you are all over TikTok, is what you primarily watch. That and YouTube are your two primary sources of information. They're not watching TV. They're not listening to the radio. They're on TikTok and they're on YouTube. Worldwide, though, there was actually a reduction in the amount of people who are using it, quite simply because of one reason. India banned the use of it. And there was 110 million people in India who were using TikTok, who suddenly were taken off the platform when they had a bit of a border stoush with China. So being a Chinese-owned app, the Indian government just said, yep, all Chinese-owned apps are now banned from our country. So that was the drop. But in the developed world, certainly in Australia, the Anglophile world, we certainly have had massive increases in the use of that. It's been very, very popular indeed. In fact, all the bluster that Donald Trump was making about banning TikTok in the US actually helped the US to have higher than ever numbers of use of that platform. He actually drew attention to the platform, and more people came on to enjoy it. Twitter hasn't really grown. In fact, it's actually contracted in a lot of places in the world. Even during a US election, that did drop, and it's continuing to drop year after year, week after week. It's just losing it's just not the place it used to be, even though I guess journalists and newspapers and TV news will convince us that it's where everything's happening. So Twitter, definitely not a place that's got that much going on. But there's been a few little changes that have come up in those social platforms over the last 6 months. Hashtags are very much alive and well on Facebook. Who'd have thought? Even a year ago, I was telling people, don't put hashtags on Facebook. It looks tacky. It looks terrible. You don't want to do that. It's awful. Don't do it. But the big change has been that Facebook understands that organic reach when it comes to Facebook business pages is really bad. Hashtags are a way of increasing that a little bit. And so they're encouraging people to search using hashtags, to build feeds based on hashtags as well, so that you can keep an eye on things that are in your neighborhood, I guess, or in your industry or your niche. So you can search by hashtags yourself. It doesn't just bring up the hashtag results, it brings up the conversational results of things that are happening, so that Facebook now becomes a bit of a market research tool and a competitive analysis tool, where you can actually start to search for things of interest to you or to your business, so you can sort of see what the best of the best is doing out there. Now, the new desktop layout on Facebook, love it or hate it, seems to have been largely adopted. A lot of the bugs have seemed to have been cleaned up now, so that's really good to see. Pretty much it wasn't that big a deal like some of the desktop changes have been in the past, quite simply because the desktop layout was really just an expanded version of their existing mobile layout, which changed over a year ago and nobody even noticed. So that layout thing's now come and gone. We're used to that. One thing that came up though was really big for business owners with pages and ad accounts is Business Suite. So you go to business.facebook.com, you'll be presented with the Business Manager or Business Suite. And if you go to the left-hand column and you click, and you can find a link to Business Suite. Business Suite is this great new way of you being able to monitor all your analytics on Facebook or your insights. You can also see all your past posts, see their performance. But the biggest deal for me has been that you can now post to both Facebook and Instagram at the same time from the desktop in Facebook. You don't have to go to Instagram anymore and cross post. You can do the same post or even do a post to each of them separately within the desktop environment within a Facebook tool called Business Suite. Creator Studio is very, very similar to that, but it's got more of the creative building tools that allow you to, put overlays and effects on your images or to edit video on the fly while you're doing something like that. Now, this does allow you to post to both Facebook and Instagram's feeds. It does not allow you to post to Instagram stories as yet. That is coming, we believe, because they've already got the ability to be able to post from Creator Studio into Facebook stories. Instagram stories has a lot more features than Facebook stories. So hopefully in the next 6 months, we'll see the ability for that to happen. And that will save us all a lot of money. Because I don't know about you, but I'm using a lot of posting tools like Social Pilot, Buffer, Hootsuite, all those kind of guys to try and post to multiple things at once and to be able to also schedule things ahead. I'm using Later to post to Instagram and to post to Instagram stories as well and schedule those posts. Once Facebook has their own tool to be able to do that, that will negate the need for most of those scheduling tools at all. And you'll be able to use just the Business Suite or Creator Studio in Facebook to be able to manage all of that. It's a great tool. Really get to know it. It's actually a bit of fun, and I don't really need most of the posting tools I use now because the Business Suite and Creator Studio ones do that for me. If you don't know where they are, just Google Facebook Business Suite or Facebook Creator Studio and it'll take you a link straight into them. Just log in with your regular Facebook login and Bob's your uncle. Then there's also the shops. There's a significant change to shopping in Facebook this year, which is all driven by plugging in certain third-party programs like Shopify, BigCommerce, WooCommerce, and some others into the Facebook Shops interface, which allows you to be able to take payment and keep people within Facebook without them leaving and having to go to your site to fulfill the purchase. At the moment, there's no sort of fee from Facebook to do that, and there's no plans really to make a fee from that, as far as I know. But it's another way for you to get a source of income directly from something like Facebook and Instagram without you having to constantly have to link people off to a website to do it. And this way, the payment still goes through your normal payment provider, whether that's Shopify Pay, PayPal, Stripe, any of those you got plugged into your e-commerce site will be done through there. Moving on to Instagram, Reels became a thing, which is basically just a copy of TikTok within the Instagram app. So they're just short form, fun videos that are very engaging and very high energetic. There's a lot less use of hashtags. Rather than hashtagging 30 things every time, getting specific about what is actually in your picture, instead of just trying to get people from Norway, Venezuela, and Armenia to link through to your local business and your posts on Instagram. Looking at getting a lot more targeted with your hashtags, local hashtags that are very relevant to what's in the photo and your products, rather than just hashtagging everything you can possibly find. There's been a big move towards what we call feed theming. So if you go to somebody's profile page in Instagram, and you see there's kind of a theme that goes through all the different posts there. It could be a pattern that goes through, it could be colors that go through. There's some really good examples. Delish Ice Pops, D-E-L-I-S-H Ice Pops in Perth are a really good example of a business that does feed theming very well. I used to do a little bit of it on my Clickstarter one as well. I think you can still see some of those. And trying to think of There's an Instagram expert who used to live in Darwin, who used to be an ASBAS advisor to Bree Designs, BREE Designs. If you look her up, her Instagram feed is very beautifully done and very consistent with a very strong theme that she carries through. And of course, shopping on Instagram as well. Moving into LinkedIn, there is now the ability for you to be able to do live video on LinkedIn. For some people, I've got it available to me. I just got it in the last probably 3 weeks. It's not for everybody. Not everyone's going to get it. Eventually we will, but for now, it is something which is kind of reserved to just, you know, a very small selection of people while they roll it out and get used to it. There's also the ability for everybody to now create events. Now, we're being very good at creating events in Facebook. There's now a LinkedIn interface for that as well. And I've got to tell you now that when it comes to my workshops, my webinars, when I invite people from LinkedIn or I invite people from Facebook, the LinkedIn invitees way outperform the Facebook ones by a ton. But then again, I'm a business to business person. If you're selling to consumers, that may not be quite the same thing for you. Hashtags have been a big thing in LinkedIn for a while. I encourage you to use them around your subject area, around your own brand. So hashtag, if your is called Sarah's Music, then you go hashtag Sarah's Music. Or if you want to go something that's around, you know, where you're located as well. So I often do in the territory, I do one of our territory hashtags is Boundless Possible. Another one would be, you know, WA Business. Queensland business, any of those things that are very relevant to what you're posting. Don't go overboard, just keep it. They have a limit of about 10, I think. I do 5, no more than 5. It gets a little bit messy in there. In Snapchat, they've got a new thing called Snap Map Places, which is filtered through the app called Foursquare. That's not going to be a really big deal to you unless you have, you know, if you're a business that's tied closely to festivals where a lot of young people go to, and you want to make sure people coming into and out of that festival know that your business is close by for festival supplies, maybe. That might be important to you. It's not going to be a really huge deal outside of the very big centers like Sydney and Melbourne, or really just American cities more than anything. It's just not going to be that hugely used a platform here in Australia. And so now you can follow topics in Snapchat, not just people, which makes it really interesting for you to follow people who are at festivals, for instance, who have shared something around a particular location. You can now follow those places to get that information. In TikTok, they have new tools for stitching scenes together. So taking one scene, stitching it with another scene and creating a whole new blended video. The whole thing when I say not pointing at words is where someone's sort of doing a cute little dance to the music and then they point up to this way and there's a word on the screen. They point up to this way and there's another word on the screen. Pointing at words thing, that thing is just really old. It's really basic and it's not going to get the cut through that you think it's going to get with TikTok. In fact, those particular kinds of videos have seen some very popular TikTokers lose a lot of audience because they overdid it. So in our closing 7 minutes that I've got, what is search and social looking like in 2021? In the search sphere, we think that in February, we're seeing a leaning towards, you know, people wanting to learn new skills because the job market is changing dramatically. Those things that we came to rely on, if you were one of those people who lost their job in the big downsize of 2020 during COVID, then you're going to find that this is going to be what you're going to be part of this crew as well. We're going to be looking for voluntary work, not because we're out of work, but because we're trying to build a better resume. Things like voluntary work, community service, all those things are going to become so much more important in a post-COVID world where we've had to learn to come together and care for each other much more than we've ever done before. Hashtags like rebuild for different places, revisit, you know, rediscover, those sort of things, and particularly Melbourne and a lot of the cities and places which have been absolutely ravaged by COVID. And now Melbourne's probably the one that's really been ravaged the most. But there's places all around Australia that lost a lot of tourists because they didn't have that. Even Sydney, who was very, very dependent upon a huge amount of international tourists, is another city that really suffered. Things like simplifying my life. You know, not wanting to have that same busy, crazy life I had before COVID, using this change in the world to kind of have a bit more of a relaxed life. Finding a new job will also be a very important one as more people look for work that's outside of things. Now, I know ScoMo has been saying that about 75% of all jobs lost during COVID have now been refilled. It's great. That's still 25% left to go. You're going to find a lot of moving around of jobs as people go, well, yeah, you know what? You treated me like crap during COVID. I don't want to work for you anymore. So I'm just going to go find something else. We're seeing a lot of this playing out in cities and towns all over Australia right now. There's no right way to act, I guess, during COVID. So businesses really had to sort of fly by the seat of our pants. We're not sure what to do. We've never had anything quite like this before. So unfortunately now we're going to be reaping the spoils of, the seeds that we sowed for our behavior during COVID-19. Later in the year, though, it's all going to be about cheap international airfares because they are about to skyrocket, no pun intended. Those airfares are going to go through the roof when it comes to opening up the countries outside of our borders again. Those cheap little fares to Bali are probably not going to be quite so cheap anymore, even though the destinations themselves will be incredibly cheap to encourage people to go there. We're expecting a lot of people to continue this COVID refugee thing, relocating from the cities to the country. We now realize that being in cities is not a great safe thing. It means you're more exposed to disease, more exposed to big problems. So they go, well, I'm going to relocate to larger, regional centres, going out to places like Toowoomba in Queensland, getting out to places like Emerald, going to Darwin, going to Alice Springs, Geraldton, Albany, Esperance, Busselton, Bunbury, anywhere that's a little bit outside of the cities. That will become a big search term later in the year, as well as continuing that trend to jobs that you can do from home. So flexible working hours, flexible working arrangements will all be on people's tips of their tongues and tips of their fingers when they go to Google later in the year. So what do you need to be doing in the meantime is working on brand awareness for your business. Remember, we're talking about how people are searching more for brands and less for categories now. That's what you need to work on. Work on your name, work on your business in terms of getting it more known out there for what it is you do and who you are that's doing it. Rewriting your website content to fit that structured content that we're looking about with Google as well. Getting control of your Google My Business and posting to it and being really, really solid and consistent with checking the information on there, and posting stuff to it. If you post something to Facebook, post it to Google My Business as well. It's going to increase the amount of data points that Google's got about your business, which means they can more adequately deliver those clients and those pieces of traffic to you as well. And think less about blogs on your website and more about landing pages, because that's the future of searching on the web. In Facebook, look at things like paid group membership. You might have had a few notifications asking you to look at that recently. Look at e-commerce and checking out, bringing your shop across to Facebook if you're using one of those major things like Shopify, BigCommerce, or WooCommerce. Boost more of your posts. This is probably something you should have been doing anyway, but I would be looking at spending at least, if you can afford to do it, $10 a day on boosting the posts that are important to get out to your audience. I really do think that it's about time we understood that Facebook is not just a freeloading platform anymore. It's now full of the world's people. So it's time to start paying your way to get in front of your audience. Boost more posts and offer more exclusives for people to want to follow you. Don't just say, I'll just follow me on Facebook. Say, follow me on Facebook because every week I have a special that you'll only be able to get if you follow me on Facebook. That kind of stuff prepares you for the big rush of people who are going to be staying on Facebook. And now that there's more shopping happening on there, we're thinking that it's going to be even more retention of people on that platform in the future. When you're thinking about Instagram, less of the sultry poses under waterfalls, and more of those raw, real, and very unfiltered moments. Those moments of beauty in the everyday. We're looking for moments, not poses, less of me and more of what I do. So it'll be less of, hey, look at me, here's my face, and me smiling, being cute. It's a lot less of that and more of, here's the things I'm getting up to, here's the things I'm doing, here's where I'm going. It's a lot more about the doing than the being on Instagram. LinkedIn is moving towards more of a why I do what I do rather than here's what I do. Constantly promoting your business by typing in sales messages to LinkedIn. As you already know, it's not getting you anywhere. So talk about the reasons why you do what you do. Don't be afraid to get a little bit vulnerable, a little bit personal. I've done it myself, and my following on Instagram has gone gangbusters. It's gone so much bigger than I ever thought it would. And I'm looking forward to growing it even more. Think about in-person events and networking that you're going to be doing on LinkedIn as well. We're used to doing a lot of webinars and a lot of Zoom calls like we're doing now. Think about the in-person events you can do and use the events platform to do it. Think about collaborating in groups and solving some of the world's big problems that you have some sort of relationship to together. Snapchat is becoming about who I am. It's all about me sharing with my personal group of friends, not really going outside into the strangers, because I just want to keep it very personal and very much within my group. But TikTok is all about what I can do. It's a show-off platform. It's about, I can play guitar, I can play piano, I can dance, I can sing, I can do funny things. I'm a funny guy. That's kind of what's going on TikTok. If you can be on that, try to be on that, but don't try to create promotional posts. Just create TikToks. And to do that, you've got to get used to what TikTok is, listen, read, watch what people are doing, and then go, oh, I now know what my niche is in this. If you want social content, it's exactly the same as we would say for your website content. What are the top 10 things people ask about at your products and services? That's 10 posts. What are the top 10 things you wish people ask about your products and services? That's another 10 posts. Stretch those out over 10 weeks. You've got a post a week that's just about your sales stuff, your products, your services, what it is you do. And then you can fill up all your other content with the fun stuff like sunsets and cute cats. Shift certainly happens. So keep going, keep learning, keep experimenting, keep doing these webinars, keep doing workshops. Don't let it go down just because we're coming out of a crisis now. And if you've got any questions about this kind of stuff at all, if you'd like a little bit of guidance on where to go, I'm available through the ASBAS Digital Solutions platform. You can just email me through this particular address and I'll give you the instructions or walk you through how to book me into that. If you've not used any one-to-one sessions before on ASBAS, they're $44, including GST for your very first one. And then any subsequent ones after that for an hour are $66, including GST. So it's a lot cheaper than buying me on my full rate. I promise you that. My full rate is like over $200 an hour. So that gives you an idea. So please have a great time, experiment, really enjoy your social media, have a bit of fun with your search as well. Create some content, use this break as a great way of doing that. And to answer your question, Kate, who came in half an hour late, the recording will be available at Business Station's YouTube channel. So just go youtube.com, type in Business Station to the search, and in the next couple of days, this will be available. I'll be loading it up probably a little later this evening to my own channel. So you can search for me on just my name, Dante St James, at YouTube later tonight, and it'll be on there as well. Thank you so much. Have a great week. I've got lots of webinars for the rest of the year, so please keep in touch with these and I'll see you soon. Thanks. Have a great afternoon.